Now let's look at mortgages. Mortgages are indeed installment loans because they are equal monthly payments every month for a certain amount of years for that loan term. Mortgage interest rates are usually lower than interest rates on other types of loan. However, you may be required to pay a down payment, typically 10 to 20% of the purchase price. There are other fees involved, which are referred to as closing costs. And they vary significantly between lenders, and you can certainly shop around for who would have the lower closing costs, but they are required to give you a clear assessment of these closing costs before you sign for the loan. So here are some of the fees that may be included in your closing costs. You have to have a home appraisal, so that would be included in your closing costs. They've got to run a credit history on you, and maybe even some points. And depending on how many points you have to pay, that's going to change those closing costs, but a point is equal to 1% of the loan amount. So just some things you need to be aware of with respect to a mortgage. Now, the simplest type of mortgage is a fixed rate mortgage. You are guaranteed that the interest rate will not change over the lifetime of that loan. And the terms for a fixed rate mortgage is either 15 or 30 years. Which one do you think would carry the highest interest rate? Having a loan term for 15 years or a loan term, gosh, I can't speak, for 30 years? Actually, the 30-year loan is going to carry a higher interest rate because you're more of a risk if you're taking 30 years to pay it off. And they'll actually earn a lot more interest from you. So it would carry the higher interest rate. So we can use that loan payment formula to calculate these payments just like we did in some previous problems. Or we can use the online mortgage calculator because they're faster and you can get that amortization schedule, which is really nice to have. So we've got two scenarios here. The loan amount is the same. The principal is $100,000. We're assuming the closing costs are the same. And I pulled some current interest rates, mortgage interest rates, for us to look at. So the bank offers a 30-year loan with an APR of 4.09, and it also offers a 15-year loan at an APR of 3.20. So let's compare the monthly payments and the total loan costs for each. So I want you to go to the mortgage calculator, and I'm going to actually choose this time. I'm going to choose the mortgage type calculator, and I want to have the one that includes the amortization schedule. And so I want you to fill in your information, take some time to do that like we did with the previous problems, and come up with your monthly payments. So I'm going to pause it and while you do that. Using the online loan calculator, I end up with the 30-year loan at 4.09%. Has a monthly payment of $482.62. The bank that offers the 15-year loan at an APR of 3.20% gives me a monthly payment of $700.24 per month. Very easily, using that online calculator, you can find these. Now, given that information, what's the total loan cost for each? So if you take that monthly payment times 12, that would give you what you would have for a year, and then multiply that by 30 for 30 years. Over the lifetime of that loan, and remember the principal was $100,000, you end up paying $173 $173,743.20. That's a total of $73,743.20 in interest. Really scary when you think about that. Now, if we use the second option, the 15-year loan at 3.20%, then the payment for that is obviously going to be higher because we're paying half of the time. The loan term is cut in half, and but the interest is lower. So $700.24 a month times 12 months in a year times 15 years. So the total loan payment on this is $126,043.20. So you can see there's a big difference there in the two. And the interest that you would pay on that second loan is $26,043.20. So comparing those two over the lifetime of the loan, you can see incredible savings going with the 15-year loan. I mean, if I subtract those two, I'm basically saving close to $50,000. But it comes down to what can you afford? Can you afford a $482.62 house payment? Or can you afford the $724 monthly payment? So that usually comes into the decision. Now we're going to look at some ways where you can, given either one of these, lessen that interest at the beginning of a loan. It's going to be a strategy we'll talk about. So consider another one. Great Bank is they're offering $100,000 30-year 4.09 fixed rate loan with closing costs of $500 plus 2 points. Big Bank offers a lower rate of 3.20 but with closing costs of $1,000 plus 2 points. And we want to evaluate these two options and then decide how long would it take me to recoup these extra closing costs. So let's just look at the closing costs. For the Great Bank, it's $500 plus 2 points. Well, remember, a point is 1% of the loan. So 1% times $100,000, that would be 1 point, but if I multiplied it by 2, that would be 2 points. So let's see what the total closing costs are there. So I get $3,000 in closing costs. For the second bank, we've got closing costs of $1,000 plus 2 points. So it's going to be $1,000 plus 1% of $100,000 times 2 because it's 2 points. I think this comes up to be $3,500. So there's the difference in our closing costs. So we want to figure out or actually analyze these two situations and then maybe see how long it would take us to recoup the extra closing costs, which one would be better for your situation. Okay, so when I multiplied those two closing costs, was not using the order of operations on my calculator, so I even make those types of mistakes. The closing costs for the first bank, Great Bank, would be $2,500, and the closing costs for Big Bank would be $3,000. The goal is still the same. We want to evaluate the two options and see how long it would take us to recoup those extra closing costs. So what we need to do is figure out what are the payments for each of these loans. So Use the online calculator. It's easy. And let's figure out the monthly payment for Great Bank and for Big Bank. Well, going to the loan payment calculator online at one bank, I see Great Bank's monthly payment would be $482.62. And that is 482.62. And that's a $100,000 loan, 30 years at 4.09 fixed rate. The Big Bank monthly payment, which is $100,000, 30 years, but an interest rate of 3.20%, would give us a monthly payment of $432.47. And we need to also consider that this second one had $500 in extra closing costs when we compare the two. So just a little note here. Let me move that out the way and go with, a little blue maybe. Just a little note. It's $500 more for closing costs. So what we want to figure out is how long would it take me to recoup those extra closing costs? And then see if it would be worth it to go with the Big Bank with the lower interest rate, but the higher closing costs. So I'm going to look at the difference in these two. If I go with Big Bank, I will end up saving $50.15 per month. On my monthly payments. How long is it going to take that $50.15 difference? How long is it going to take to make up for the extra $500 I had to pay in closing costs? So I'm going to take the $500 and divide it by 50.15. And I come up with 9.97, or approximately 10 years. So if I went with Big Bank with the smaller monthly payment but the higher closing costs, then it would take me 10 years to recoup those extra closing costs, that extra $500 I paid. So now here is where we need to think about this situation. What if this is your situation, you're moving to a new town, and your job has a tendency to move you from place to place quite often. So you may not be in this home but for just a couple of years. So do you want to put out the extra $500 knowing that you're not going to recoup that if you don't stay in the house at least 10 years? So you could look at maybe consider Great Bank because you didn't have a larger outlay of capital, of cash there at the beginning. So another thing we can think about, another way to compare these is just if you know you're going to be in the house 2 or 3 years, figure out what you would pay in this loan in 2 or 3 years, say 3 years. Figure out what you would pay in this loan in 2 or 3 years, and just check it out and see which one you would end up paying more on. So you want to think about those things when you decide on a loan. But fixed rates are the simplest types of loans to get and calculate. Look at this illustration of principal and loan payments. And let me just sort of zoom out there a minute. We've got a graph here illustrating what it looks like when you make your payment and what part of that payment goes towards interest and what part of that payment goes towards principal. So we're assuming we've got a $734 monthly note. between years 0 and 5, this blue area that we see above represents the amount of that $734, the amount of that's going towards interest. And the amount of that's going towards your principal. So notice here at the beginning, the majority of your payment is going towards interest, just a very small amount towards principal. Now, as the number of years goes on in the term of that loan, notice how it flip-flops here at the end. You're still paying $734, but at the end, the majority of your payment goes towards principal. Just the tiniest bit up here goes towards interest. That's a good thing to know, and there is a way that you can kind of beat that with some strategies. So let me talk about some payment strategies. One thing you can do is make extra principal payments over the lifetime of your loan. Or another thing you can do is pay off a 30-year loan in 15 years by making extra payments a year. So I've got an amortization table that's for $100,000, and it's for 30 years, and is it for 30 years? Dang, I'm not sure what I did there. Yeah, I don't have the details on that. What I do have here, though, is what the amortization table looks like at the beginning of your loan and what the amortization table looks like at the end of your loan. So let's take a quick look at this. I know I've zoomed it in quite a bit, but I want you to see something. I want to illustrate the strategy of making extra principal payments. So look at this amortization table. Your payment is $536.82, your first payment. The amount of that is applied to principal is $120.15. The amount of that payment that goes towards interest is $416.67. Notice how the majority of that $536 is payment on interest. Now let's talk about this extra principal payment. Let's suppose that when you send in your very first payment of $536.82, you add to that payment something that we call an extra principal payment. So to the $536.82, you add $120.66. And that's just, let me get that counted in. Okay, so I'm going to add to that first payment this principal for the next month. So I'd be sending in a check for $756, something like that. Here is what happens. That's called an extra principal payment. And by you making next month's principal payment, you wipe out this $416.17 that you would have paid in interest next month. Now you can't skip next month's payment, but you skip next month's total interest. So right now, bottom line, you wipe out $416 that you would have paid over the lifetime of that loan. I know this works that way. You can do it with auto loans, home loans, making an extra principal payment. So really, you wiped out December's payment. Now you can't skip it. You're kind of next time going on to January's payment. So in December, you would be paying $536.82. Only $121 of that goes towards principal. $415 goes towards interest. But if you happen to make an extra principal payment of $121.66, you wipe out this $415.16 interest that would be part of that next month's payment. If you continue to do this, you are going to decrease greatly the amount of interest you pay on that loan. And that's just called making an extra principal payment. It doesn't have to be the number here, $120.66. You could just add an extra $50 as a principal payment, or an extra $25. When you do that, you will always be saving principal that you would be paying on next month. If you can lower that principal amount sooner, then you'll be paying less interest. So now this is at the beginning of a loan. Let's look at the end of a loan. Okay, so here towards the end of the loan, we've got still have the same payment. It's an installment loan, $536.82. But of that $536.82, $504 of it goes towards principal. Only $32 goes towards interest. It wouldn't benefit you greatly to make extra principal payments here because you've paid down on your principal so much that the interest is very low. So if you make extra principal payments here, based on what we did earlier, you would want to take that $536.82 and add to it the $506.46, which is the next principal from the next month. And by doing that, you would just save yourself $30.36. Not a huge savings. So it's best to make these extra principal payments early in the loan. That will save you the most money. You'll be wiping out $400 and something of interest there at the beginning of your loan. I think that's just an awesome strategy. Let me actually pull this back down to where we can see it. Okay. And one of the last things to talk about here, adjustable rate mortgages. It's a low-risk strategy for lenders. However, the interest you pay changes whenever the prevailing rates change. Adjustable rate mortgage. You usually have a lower interest rate at the beginning. However, it might be guaranteed for 6 months, but then after that it has a tendency to rise or fall. And fortunately, there is a cap. There is a rate cap, but it's a risk. To make a decision between a fixed rate loan and an ARM can be one of the most important financial decisions of your life. You've got to weigh out a lot of detail with respect to that. And so, take a finance class and talk more about that, but just wanted to give you a heads up on adjustable rate mortgages. So let's wrap up this section and this chapter. So let's answer a few questions. In the early years of a 30-year mortgage, most of your payment goes to what? Principal or interest is the answer, one of the two. Most of your payment goes towards interest. Okay, if we have a loan of $200,000 that carries a 2-point origination fee, then how much money is that going to be as an advance payment? So remember, we said 1 point was equal to 1% of the loan. So it would make sense that 2 points is equal to 2% of the loan. So what is 2% of $2,000? Or we could figure out what's 1%. 1% of $200,000 would be what? $2,000. So 1 point equal 1% would be $2,000. So 2 points, which is 2%, just doubles that, which would be $4,000. So the closing costs for this, or the 2-point origination fee that you would have to pay up front, would be $4,000. Okay, let's look at the next situation. Consider 2 mortgage loans with the same principal and the same APR. Loan 1 is fixed for 15 years and loan 2 is fixed for 30 years. So which of the following statements is true? Loan 1 will have a higher monthly payment, but you will pay less total interest over the life of the loan. Loan 1 will have a lower payment and you will pay less total interest over the life of the loan. Both loans will have the same monthly payments, but you'll pay less total interest with loan 1. Which of those makes sense when I'm comparing a 15-year loan for loan 1 and a 30-year loan for loan 2? Should answer A. The 15-year loan will have a higher monthly payment, but you will pay less interest over the life of the loan. One last one. With the same term, same term meaning years, the amount borrowed being your principal, the loan that has a higher APR will have what? A lower monthly payment than a loan with a lower APR, a higher monthly payment than a loan with an APR, a lower APR, or a payment that could be greater or less than that of a loan with a lower APR. Figure that one out. I hope you answered a loan with a higher APR will have a higher monthly payment than a loan with a lower APR. Just one of those truths. So now we're done with 4D, and you can go into my math lab and complete that homework assignment.